Pull closer. The cold up here doesn't just bite your skin. It waits for you to breathe out, and slips inside your lungs like broken glass. Look at the ink on those early 20th century government surveys. You see that thin black line marked 61 degrees north. Beyond it, conventional mapping ceased. They left a blank white void across 30,000 square kilometers of limestone and black spruce. The spruce trees grow crooked in the permafrost, bent like old men leaning over a pit. It wasn't because they ran out of ink. It was because the men they sent in rarely came back to report the coordinates. Between 1905 and the 1940s, a handful of prospectors entered this wilderness seeking gold. Some were later found without their heads. Others were never seen again. There is an absolute, smothering silence that swallows the birds long before the snow falls. You can walk 3 days along the banks of Deadmen Valley without hearing a single jay scream or a timber wolf howl. A bitter, sulfurous steam rises off geothermal springs, mixing with -40 air until you can't tell fog from smoke. The river starts at the Moose Ponds, high up on the Subarctic divide beneath Mount Nazi-Choch. 565 kilometers of dark water carving through the Mackenzie and Selwyn Mountains down to the Liard. If you float downstream past Rabbit Kettle Lake, the water plunges over Nilicho, Virginia Falls. 96 meters of sheer vertical drop, splitting around a massive central rock stack like an iron wedge. Once your canoe passes that brink, you are swallowed by the four canyons. The iron tang of wet, ancient limestone hangs heavy in the damp air inside First Canyon. Fourth Canyon traps you in 5 kilometers of sheer, vertical stone walls. Third Canyon cuts through the sandstone strata of the Funeral Range, where sudden wind gusts rip down the cliffs to capsize rivercraft. Then comes Second Canyon, opening into Deadmen Valley, an intermontane basin trapped between the Headless and Funeral Ranges. It was gold that brought them east from the Yukon after the 1898 Klondike Rush. Driven by rumors of placer deposits tucked inside the tributary beds. In 1904, Métis Scottish brothers Frank and Willie McLeod walked into the basin, returning with rich samples. In 1905, they mounted a second expedition, accompanied by Scottish engineer Robert Weir. They never came out. In 1908, Charlie McLeod led a search party into Deadman Valley. At a camp along the riverbank, he found the skeletal remains of Frank and Willie. Both bodies were decapitated, their skulls missing from the site. One brother lay in his bedroll. The other lay with an arm extended toward his rifle. Robert Weir was never found. In 1915, Swiss prospector Martin Jorgenson entered the valley to search for the lost McLeod mine. After mailing word home that he had struck a rich vein, trappers found his cabin burned to the ground and his headless skeleton lying outside. In 1928, the bones of Yukon Fisher were found along a creek bed. In 1945, trapper Walter Tully discovered miner Ernest Savard dead inside a sleeping bag in Deadmen Valley, his head completely severed from his torso. The smell of burnt pine, wood ash, and cold soot lingering over a ruined hearth. Sensational headlines back south claimed monsters and headhunting tribes. But long before prospectors entered the basin, the river was home to the Decho and Satu Dene. Dene oral histories recall a distinct mountain-dwelling tribe known as the Naha, warrior peoples who descended from high alpine plateaus to raid lowland settlements before retreating back into the gorges. Dene accounts recall how warriors eventually organized a counteroffensive, tracking raiding parties through Prairie Creek to their main mountain settlement. When the warriors surrounded the camp at night and moved in at dawn, they found the encampment completely deserted. Campfires were still smoldering. Sleeping robes were spread inside the teepees. Cooking utensils remained in place. Yet not a single human being was present. No signs of battle or tracks leading away. Modern linguistic research suggests a rapid migration southward, leaving behind an empty territory. To survive this landscape, traditional Dene spatial protocols, or Dene laws, were passed down through generations. Among these is a specific taboo against pitching camps facing east along the river. The narrow gorges act as natural wind tunnels where cold Katabatic winds blow down valley from the west. A shelter facing east catches these violent microbursts, scattering campfires and trapping heavy cold inside. The reality of the fatalities in the valley is grounded in the brutal mechanics of the Subarctic.
Winter temperatures along the South Nahanni routinely drop below minus 45 degrees. Inexperienced prospectors succumb to starvation, scurvy, or hypothermia in their sleep. When a body freezes in the bush, post-mortem scavenging mechanics take over. Grizzly bears and timber wolves target the soft tissue and cervical structures of frozen corpses. In severe sub-zero conditions, scavengers sever frozen heads from spinal columns to move them away from the carcass, dispersing lighter bones across the terrain. Add to that the complete absence of law enforcement during gold rush disputes. Robbery, resource homicides, and arson disguise the work of human hands. The dry, chalky scrape of ancient bone sliding across solid subterranean ice. The geology itself acts as a physical trap. In First Canyon lies Grotte Valerie, a cavern system spanning over 2 kilometers of passages. Heavy, freezing winter air sinks into its lower galleries, forming permanent ice floors. Inside its main gallery, explorers found the preserved skeletons of more than 116 doll sheep. Animals had entered seeking shelter or mineral salts, slipped on frozen inclines, and became trapped in total darkness. Radiocarbon dating showed those remains accumulated over thousands of years. At Kraus Hot Springs, thermal waters discharge at 35 degrees, creating warm soil where wild vegetables grow in sub-zero winters,
localized thermal pockets that fed early stories of an unmapped, ice-free paradise. Today, the region is protected as Nahanni National Park Reserve, cooperatively managed by Parks Canada and the Deadmen First Nations. Designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site, its sensitive karst caves and historical sites are protected conservation zones. The cartographic blank space at 61 degrees north was built on hard geography, extreme weather, isolated gold rush fatalities, and ancient territorial histories. The wilderness doesn't need curses to take a man. It only needs cold, isolation, and a single mistake.
The cold dampness of evening mist settling over wool clothes, smelling faintly of old wood smoke and ozone. When night falls over Deadmen Valley and the Katabatic winds start howling off the ice fields, respect the rules of the land. Keep your campfire lit and never pitch your tent facing east.